But not a healthy option.
Yeah, not the most healthy options, or even indulge in excess intoxication. These are all coping mechanisms that we see today.
Now that we have pulled ourselves back from the precipice,
Yeah.
I guess it's time to figure out what's really going on here.
Yes. It is important to now get a much better understanding because we have stabilized ourselves.
Right.
We are now in a position to see other dimensions which we would have otherwise overlooked in that panic-stricken mood.
True.
When the emotional brain is overactive. Now we've taken control, we've taken charge. This is the right time to figure out the second phase of handling. We've done regulating, which is about stabilizing our energy. Next is about figuring out. Let's figure out what this figuring out is about.
Sure.
The first step is to get the facts, and only the facts. List down the facts. What exactly has happened here? And it helps to have a pen and paper at this stage. Who said what happened after that, what went wrong, what all went wrong, did everything go wrong? If needed, get a pen and jot down all these events as they unfolded.
Okay.
So what you're doing is like a FIR report. You're preparing a sequence of events. May not be the best example, but you're being very clinically detached in a sense, as clinically detached as you can be, and jotting down the points, the events that happened. So you have a clear idea of what are the facts. Typically we see when we are in a disturbed state, facts get mixed up with fiction and a lot of imaginary stuff. So now it's important to analyze and screen what you have noted down as facts. You might have noted them down as facts. Let's find out how much of it is fact and how much of it is
Drama.
coming from the drama and the fiction. Are you seeing the full picture? One of my favorite models in this context is the thinking errors model that is used in cognitive behavioral interventions. The idea here is that we use certain filters to make snap judgments about events, situations and people. And in many cases it might work as well. You might be pretty accurate in those snap judgments. Be aware that you may not be accurate always, and that's what we are doing by filtering and screening at this stage. Because if we don't do the filtering, we may end up with distorted, generalized understanding. A few are given here. I'll give a few examples here and check out if you're using any of these filters. One of the thinking errors that many of us indulge in, or all of us indulge in at least at some point, is called the black and white thinking. And how do I know I'm doing black and white thinking? This is when you hear these absolutist statements. He is always like this. You always come late. You never remember my birthday, okay? You never do anything right. So you will hear these words, never, ever, always. When you notice it, just flip it around and ask yourself, really? Is it always the case? Is it never? Is it ever? Just question yourself. Because I remember sometimes there was this colleague who used to come late occasionally, and when I say occasionally, it could be once in a fortnight. And that was not noticed much. Now there was this particular week where somebody fell ill in the family, due to which for 2 consecutive days he came late. Now his manager has this understanding that once in a while this guy comes late. Now when he did it for the second day, this manager was looking for him at that point of time in the morning. When he didn't find him and when he came late, he just blasted him. You always do this, you always come late. And then the guy was wondering, no, I don't always come late. It's being too unfair. So what happens over here is it's a black and white situation. Either
Right.
it's on or off. we need to step back from such generalizations.
I guess from personal experience, I see that you do this a lot, even in personal situations. Very
Indeed,
common.
Indeed. It's very easy to put these labels and say that guy is always useless,
Exactly.
he's careless. It's very tempting and easy to do it. And just be aware that while doing it, we might be complicating the situation further because we are now retaining a distorted picture.
Right.
We are generalizing and it's not the complete picture. Right? The other example is overgeneralization. This is when we take one or two incidents and make blanket sweeping proclamations and judgments. The same question in the previous segment can make an opening. Maybe it is a one-off. It's time to chill. So I just take one random incident and then I assume that this is the case always. The other thinking error is about discounting positives. This is when we conveniently ignore positive aspects and exclusively focus on mistakes and certain negatives.
Especially when things are not going the way you have expected.
Yes.
Very common.
Yes. So, person has done 7 things right and then made 3 mistakes. Alright, one of them happens to be a big mistake. Now, I go ahead and ignore all those 7 and paint a picture as if this person is a total idiot. How could he make such a mistake? Imagine what you're doing to the person and to yourself. You are choosing to be angry with those 3 incidents. So it's a case of discounting positives. How do we handle this? Wear the other hat and see if you can at least mentally acknowledge or recognize some positives that are genuinely there in the person. And here I'll give a tip. This is actually a secret activity. I may not want to explicitly say that, but in my mind, I can come to this understanding. He's not that bad. He made this mistake, but let's grant it to him. He's done so many things right as well. Let me help him to address this mistake. I cannot use the same approach that I do with a person who makes 9 mistakes and does one thing right. Just think about it, many of us do that.
True. Very true.
And choose to become more angry, unconsciously. The other thinking errors are magnification and minimization, wherein we exaggerate the situation or its negatives mentally. Sometimes imagining catastrophic situations that may not have happened in reality and getting also worked up. This project will collapse. This is the worst thing that can happen. So you are magnifying it. Or, no, it's not that bad. Because you want to assume that it's not that bad. So these are all thinking errors which lead to distorted pictures. And let me tell you one thing. In fact, I don't like this word thinking errors. I actually like to replace it with the word called thought filters. Because these are filters we are using to come up with some convenient pictures for ourselves. All I'm saying is all of us do it. So don't feel bad if you think this is something you keep doing. Now you have the awareness, now you have the understanding. Remember what I said earlier? Take it as a challenge.
Very true.
I can work through these things. Let me go ahead and conquer myself.
It's about figuring out, basically.
It is about figuring out. The key point here is to avoid denial of issues, stop indulging in wishful thinking about what could have happened, because we can go off on a tangent. A spirit of critical inquiry with a healthy dose of skepticism is good, but please don't take along carping cynicism. That's all I would say. And a little tolerance for uncertainty may also help you a lot. See, these are all things that matter in terms of perspective, in terms of expanding your understanding and awareness. If you can pick and choose what works for you, you will be able to figure out in a much better way and find a much wider platter of options before you make your conclusions that this is what has gone wrong and thereby this is what needs to be fixed. Otherwise, if we go with all this black and white thinking and minimization, maximization and all, your input for analysis to arrive at a solution is so minimized, it is so distorted. Be aware that you don't need to do that. Nobody is forcing you to do that.
So figure out the situation as it is.
As it is. And that's exactly why I so much liked your suggestion of mindfulness, because mindfulness is really about that. See it exactly as it is.
Just remove all those filters which you have.
Remove all the filters, all the paraphernalia, all those dramatic generalizations.
And suddenly you will realize that what you were thinking as a problem
Yes.
is rather a smaller problem
or a bigger
or
problem.
even a bigger
Or
problem.
even a
Exactly.
bigger problem. Because now you see that there are even bigger danger signals if I don't act at the moment.
True.
For that understanding, take away the drama, take away the thought filters, and add in as many perspectives as possible. It'll help. It'll really help. Also, another tip is to keep certain working assumptions with you. One working assumption would be that this relationship is important for me. If I have that sorted out in my mind, that's a very good anchor point. I know that what matters here is the resolution of the issue, not to discredit the person
Right.
and prove that person wrong in front of everybody, expose and score a point there. Rather, I'm only interested in the resolution. But that's for you to make that choice. Maybe sometimes you genuinely want to focus on the person, not on the issue. Make that choice with awareness.
Really good points.
The important point is to replace the temptation to hold on to absolutist positions with a possibility oriented approach. Keep the working assumption that the relationship is to be saved and the pain points are to be discarded, not the other way around. Otherwise, you will end up holding the pain points and the relationship goes kaput.
Very well said.
Unless that's what you want. Now that you've got a better perspective, this is the time to figure out options.
Okay, so basically what you are saying is figuring out is a two-stage
Yes,
thing.
yes,
And first you are figuring out what's going on,
yes.
and then you are figuring out what are the options.
What options do I have?
Okay, what
And
options I have.
Yeah, and while figuring out what's happening, and while preparing myself to figure out what options I have, it's important to filter out the drama.
Okay,
That's what we did by using those thought filters and seeing whether we are doing any of these patterns, and let's come to a much more nuanced understanding. At this stage, it's important to shift your energy as well, to be a little more positive and resourceful so that you can identify the best outcome. This is the time to define a good outcome, a desired outcome. And one way to do it is to identify potential outcomes that you'd like to see. Write down the top 3 things you would like to see happen when the issue is resolved, when you have reached the destination. I'll give a general guideline here. Once this issue is completely solved in the best possible way, what would it be like? So you are describing the outcome when the issue is resolved to full satisfaction. What do I see that will be different? It's important to have an understanding of what will be different. What are the benefits that will accrue? Because when you decide and when you define what is going to be different, that is what is not present today, right? What more needs to happen to make it even better? Is there some way that the other person or persons can also feel good about the outcome? If yes, what would be added to this picture that I've just painted. So here I'm making sure that it's not just my definition of the outcome, it's also the other person's definition of the outcome that I'm factoring in here. And this doesn't need to be done in isolation. You can do it yourself. You can even include the other person. Or you can even go out for a meeting at this stage and say, let's define the outcome, let's get things sorted. This is where brainstorming can happen as well. And the operative word here is best possible outcome. At this stage, don't think of the feasibility. Aladdin's genie is almost waiting for your wish. Imagine that's what is happening. Just state it. No, if possible, write it down or type it out. That gives you clarity about the outcome that you're looking for. And if you have factored in things that will make the other people also happy, it's a great input before you go for a meeting with them.
Right.
So their defenses are also now down because you have thought from their point of view as well. And you've done all this only after stabilizing yourself, regulating yourself, figuring out what are these facts and fiction.
And even the final outcome.
Now you are ready to take action. And before you take action, define the specific action that you're going to take. Now you have got the outcome, the desired outcome. Compare the desired outcome with current situation and see what steps need to be taken to move from where you are to where you want to be. What actions can I take? Who do I talk to? Who can help me? What should I watch out for? What are the potential pitfalls? What kind of self-regulation can I plan when I take the action? And that's very important, because with that answer you are getting into the next aspect of handling, which is the actual action. You're getting into the execution of the actions. But before getting into the execution, please have a small toolkit ready for self-regulation again, because when you start taking actions, again it is possible that certain things might go out of order, which will again put you in an unresourceful state.
And you might have to again first control that situation.
Yes, you might have to do that. So be aware that especially when we are recovering from certain setbacks and crises, whether it's in our personal or professional lives, there is a possibility of certain relapses occurring. But when the relapse occurs, we cannot give up and run away. That's a very cowardly thing to do. And there is no point getting totally crushed and feeling angry again that, oh my God, in spite of all this, it's again happening. So just have a toolkit with you at this stage also. It's the same toolkit which you used earlier. That toolkit is sufficient even here. Make sure you can invoke it whenever you are in the execution phase. Now you get into the third phase, which is moving, which is nothing but taking those actions. What is that very first step that I can take right now? Is it talking to two people? Is it sending out an email? Is it getting certain help organized? Whatever is that action, take it. And while doing that, be aware that certain situations will again put you out of order. Just invoke the toolkit and you're good to go ahead. So we have done handling by regulating ourselves, figuring out what needs to be done, figuring out the outcome, and by taking the action in the move phase.
Now that sounds like a plan to move forward.
Yes.
So in this, when the another point which is coming in my mind is that are we even trying to make this a natural response down the line?
Yes. If you can develop and strengthen your toolkit with more and more options
and practice
and the preparatory steps to stabilize yourself, to develop that awareness and understanding, just look around in your offices. There may be very few people But there are few people who are excellent crisis managers. They know to bring stability to a situation with calm poise, and they know to get a plan of action without melodrama. Observe what they're doing, and you'll get a lot of insights, a lot of ideas.
Key seems to be awareness.
Key is awareness.
Because I can see like the point coming back,
Yeah.
like the observing part of it, observing yourself,
Yes.
observing others, or even what I'm getting now is, even though I might not be able to control a certain situation or maybe control my anger at that point, there is a lot of learning even after I have lost control on my temper.
True.
Because if I'm observing that after the situation has occurred,
Exactly.
and I'm observing what actually happened,
Yes.
where actually I went out of control,
Yes.
and probably that will give me an idea that that is the part I need to strengthen more
Strengthen more and add
with
more
practice,
options
and
into
get
my.
more aware
Yes.
that this is my weak area.
This is the pattern, and next time round, let me add one more option into my toolkit.
Right.
And with that, I strengthen the possibility of handling such a situation in future differently.
So even by missing certain opportunities
Yes.
to use this framework,
Yes.
probably if we analyze them after that,
Very true.
again we are adding back to our strengths.
Our strengths, our awareness, and also by observing others who are handling such situations remarkably well, you will get a lot of ideas.
Yeah, sometimes you don't have to learn everything from scratch
Exactly,
for yourself.
exactly.
Probably someone else, what they are doing,
Indeed.
might be applicable to you.
Indeed. And this is where, when people travel, when they meet new people, when you go into different countries and cultures, it is a great learning opportunity to look at how they handle crisis. What are the kind of tools they use? What kind of analysis techniques do they use? How do they gather information? How do they even talk? That's so important.
Observe.
Observe.
Observe with all senses.
Observe and add ideas into your toolkit, because that's the experience which you will always cherish.